Today I'm making a Christmas arrangement for your home or your local church using these gorgeous supermarket red flowers. Stick with me if you want to see what I can create. So welcome back. It's really cold here today in South Wales. Winter has definitely arrived and I'm trying to keep myself warm with a nice hot cup of tea. Welcome back to another one of my tutorials. If you haven't been here before, my name is Sharon Dower and I run the Sharon Dower Flower School. We've got lots of online courses coming up for January 2023. If you want some information, message me on the email address below. Now today we're going to use some gorgeous red supermarket roses. Nothing extravagant, nothing over the top. This is just one of the cheaper range of supermarket roses. I've got some pines and some conifers and a different selection of greenery, and I'm going to add in some beautiful silver twigs. Now my container is this fabulous wooden box. I've been searching for long rectangular boxes for a long time and I've managed to get hold of this fabulous rustic sort of style container. It's quite grey in its colouring, which is why I've gone with the silvery twigs. Today I'm going to use a product by Oasis called Floral. It's a sustainably sourced mechanic, so it's like a floral foam block, but it's been made with basalt rock. It does disintegrate down to a very fine sand, but it isn't classed as biodegradable and it does need to go into landfill, or you could use it as a soil enhancer in your own garden. If you haven't seen the product before, it comes in the boxes just like this. So Flora by Smithers Oasis. If you haven't used it before, then it looks like this. It's a beautiful colour, very organic, quite natural, not as artificial as the green foam in its look, so it's easier to camouflage in a floral design. It comes in the same size blocks. I have used it previously in another video and I don't find it the easiest of mechanic to use, but we have to try and look at using more sustainable options, and I'm going to give it another go today, creating a different style of arrangement. It soaks up water really quickly, and if you hold it in this position it retains the water really well as well. If you try and use it in that vertical position, the water does tend to dry out from the bottom. If you've got sensitive skin, I would suggest that you wear gloves. It's very much like the insulation that we put in our lofts here in the UK to keep us nice and warm. It has a little bit of a sort of sharp texture to it. It's almost layered in sections. It's very much like a flaky pastry in all those lots of layers. So I don't find it the most easiest of foams to use. So you can come with me on my journey of discovery. What I've done is soaked it in the normal way. It soaks really quickly, and then I've cut it to fit perfectly inside my container. And I'm hoping, because it's tightly compact in the base there, it's going to be easier for me to insert the flowers in. It has been suggested that you use the foam dry and then you add the water to it, because then it swells up around the stems and makes them more secure. I've already pre-soaked this and placed it into the container, and it's nice and firm and solid in there. And I have got to my side a kebab stick, just in case I need to poke a few holes into the floral foam there to make it easier for me when I insert my flowers into the foam. So I'm going to do this as a front-facing arrangement, although it's probably going to look quite similar from front to back. Fabulous for the back of a table if you've got a buffet and you've got the table up against a wall. Fantastic on a windowsill, ideal for an altar in a church. So it's going to be quite tall and you will see through it because it's going to be fairly transparent in its design, but not suitable for the centre of a table. Okay, so I'm going to start with my roses first. I'm thinking that because we've got a thick stem on them, it's going to be better to insert them into the foam when I've got plenty of room. And this style is going to be parallel, so we're going to start on one side and we're going to work our way over from one side to the other. I have left quite a lot of the greenery on the rose. That's not a very good start, is it? I've got one that's snapped, so we'll use him up lower down later on. And I think sometimes that is one of the disadvantages of using supermarket flowers, is sometimes they can be damaged by customers lifting them out of the packaging or out of the buckets and, you know, moving them around. They're not always in that perfect condition when you have them. Now what I've done so far, and I'm using a knife today to give a nice clean cut on the bottom of my roses. Commercial florists tend to work with a knife because it's much faster and you're not putting down your tools, picking them up and then swapping around your equipment. If you haven't got a knife and you're not used to working with a knife, then, you know, don't worry about it. But I've done vertical placements with my roses. If we look at it from the side, I've used the whole space of my foam, so I've come front and back so that we create that depth and the design doesn't become flat. And I've layered the heads at different positions. If you think about garden flowers and materials that grow naturally, they don't form that very solid severe line at the top. They all finish at a different point. And I'm not quite all the way along, but I've made a very good start. So 6 roses in, I've got 5 left. I possibly won't use the one that snapped because it's going to be too short in the arrangement. And just as a rough guide, I've gone about the same length this time as my container. Quite often we go twice the height or twice the width of our container, but for today I've used the same measurement as my base. I need to leave space in amongst the flowers, and sometimes if you're a sort of trained UK flower arranger, leaving space in amongst your flowers is sometimes quite difficult because we're always told to fill every gap, don't leave any stem visible. But for me, this style of arranging lends itself really well to single bloom flowers, and showing the stem is just as attractive to me as the main flower head. These roses were only purchased yesterday, so the head is still quite small, but they will open up and make a really beautiful arrangement. Just one more rose to go, and I think we're going to work this to my right hand side. I've got into the fibre flora quite a distance. Because we've got a lot of height with these roses, they need to be really stable in the container. So I've gone in a good depth. What you will also find with this style of foam is that the water quite often wells to the bottom. So the further down you push your stem, the better chance you have of your flowers lasting. If you can't get roses, that could be a carnation or a gerbera, but ideally a single flower, because I think that works better to make that dramatic line of movement across the top. Introducing a little bit of colour, I've got the silver twigs. Now you might get fed up with me using twigs because I use these a lot in floral design. This one is birch, and these have been pre-dyed, so they've been dip dyed at the suppliers, at the growers, and it's going to give me a lovely sort of colour link between my base. Now my base is grey and silver is the same sort of colourway, and we're going to work that colour in from one side to the other. I've switched now to my scissors or my secateurs because the stem of the birch is a little bit tougher. If you haven't got silver twigs like me, then you can use any branch from the garden. You might have some red cornus in your garden, or you could even have some lime green cornus or dogwood in your garden. Forsythia branches look really nice. And whatever part of the world you're watching from, just have a look for something that gives lovely structure and elegant lines to your arrangement. My positioning is parallel. They're not perfectly matching like you do see in some parallel arrangements, and there is a little bit of movement from side to side with the birch branches. If we look at it again from the side, we've got that depth. I've used the whole of my floral foam in the base, and there's a lovely bit of rhythm as my flower heads bounce from one side to the other. And that's the top of the arrangement finished. I'm not going to add any more flowers, I'm not adding any more twigs or branches, but what I now need to do is cover the base there and cover my foam. What I could do if I wanted to keep it simple is just put some moss on the top there, or some flat leaves. You might have pebbles or gravel that would sit beautifully there on the bottom. I've got lots of Christmas greens, I've got pines and conifers. I'll talk you through the different varieties as we go along. I'm going to start with the Nordman pine, and you might be familiar with this because we quite often buy Christmas trees in Nordman pine. It's a good non-drop pine, and I'm doing Christmas wreath making workshops here at the moment, so I've got lots of short bits of pines and conifers that are left over from the workshops. If you've had a fresh Christmas tree delivered and you've cut off the base of the branches, then that's a great foliage to use in this particular design. The different types of pines and the conifers last really, really well, and you know that they're going to last through the festive period. They can cope with the dry air in the house if you've got your heating on, and I'm going to work the different colours from one side of the foam to the other. Now, one of the disadvantages I find of this foam is that it's very hard to get the materials in from the side. So one of the other reasons that I kept it below the container, below the edge of the container, is so that I have to put the greenery in at the top. We try and come in from the side. If we look at this block here, we try and come in from the side. I find it quite difficult to insert my flowers or my foliage. So by coming in from the top section, the structure of that foam is far more tolerant to the materials coming in that position. You'll see that I've removed all the pine needles, any greenery, any thorns with the roses off the bottom. And that will enable me to get a nice clean insertion there into the foam. I'm not needing to use the kebab stick at the moment to poke a little hole in the foam, and that has worked fairly well. So that was mainly the Nordman pine. I had a little bit of blue pine in there as well. Again, it's a grey blue toned foliage, so it works really well with the colour of my base. And that's all about rhythm and repetition. It's about copying and repeating the colours or the flowers or the patterns that you've created. Right then, now we're going to move on to a little bit of contrasting greenery, and this is just your ordinary sort of Leylande conifer. Another one that you might have growing in the garden, might be able to forage it. And this time of the year, most good florists would have a range of Christmas greenery that you can purchase. It is the cheapest of greenery and the cheapest of foliage, but it does last exceptionally well, has that beautiful pine scent to it, so it really is worth spending that extra little bit of money on buying something that you know is going to last through the Christmas period. Right, now I've done the edges, so now I'm going to bring the different colours through to the middle, and I'm still inserting the greenery in that parallel manner. So I'm coming upright, almost like street light lamps or soldiers standing in a line. I'm coming in that parallel position and not radiating them out from the centre point. So even the bottom of my arrangement follows the parallel placement. And I know, especially if you're here in the UK, we tend to taught one style of parallel arranging, that very European-inspired continental parallel arrangement that you see in lots of magazines, lots of books, but it's not the only way of arranging your stems in a parallel fashion. Okay, last foliage for this one is this beautiful Pinus strubus, or needle pine. Lovely texture, nice and soft, and it's a very different shape to the other greens that I've put in. This one is softer, a bit lighter, and it's going to add a bit of softness there to the base. Now, if you don't have Christmas greens like I have here, then just look at things that you might have in the garden, or you might have from your neighbour's garden. It could be camellia, you could use bay, rosemary, laurel, pittosporum. You could buy eucalyptus from your local florist shop. And don't feel that you're restricted because you don't have the same choice of foliage that I have here. Common ivy would be brilliant, just base the whole with some common ivy. And there you are, quite a quick design, quite a statement piece. Got that beautiful row of red roses at the top. If you did a row of these on the altar for the church, it would look quite magnificent. I've just got one last bit to add into the design, and this is something that, this is the first year that I've used this. I often see it in European flower arranging. If you travel on the continent around Christmas and you're at Christmas markets or you're in a florist shop, you will see all this beautiful waxed asparagus. I've never been able to buy it before, but I spotted it this week on the online auction and it's just absolutely wonderful. So this is the asparagus foliage, not the asparagus that we eat, the asparagus greenery, and I'm going to sort of lay it across the top. So instead of my parallel placements going vertically, I'm now creating a parallel line across the bottom. Now this lasts really well out of water because it's been waxed and preserved, so I don't have to push it into the floral foam. And if you can't get hold of this, because it's probably quite a specific material that you'd have to order from a florist shop, then you could use some ivy vine running across the base or clematis vine, anything that gives you that horizontal line movement. I'm just going to place one little bit at the back and then I think I'm done. If you wanted to, you could add some pretty stars or some baubles or some decoration. Now I think with a simple bunch of supermarket flowers, I've made quite an attractive floral design. Hopefully you'll have a little go at that at home. As always, thank you very much for joining me and thank you so much for coming back. I look forward to seeing you for the next video, which I think might be a Christmas hat box. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel or hit that notification bell if you want to be told every time I upload a new tutorial. And I look forward to seeing you next time. So bye for now.